You are listening to the Impact Brevard podcast, brought to you by East Coast Christian Center. Impact Brevard exists to support business leaders who want to serve Christ in their daily work life. We provide a setting for leaders to connect, discuss, and find solutions to the unique and often unaddressed issues that leaders face, both at work and at home. The meeting is open to all business owners and leaders. Please enjoy today's episode, hosted by Jeannie Terry.
Excellent. All right. Welcome to Impact Brevard. Today is Thursday, April 1st. My name is Jeannie Terry, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's luncheon event. Today, I'm interviewing Mr. Curtis Lawrence today. So I'm going to briefly introduce him. Curtis was born and raised in New Jersey. He studied mathematics at Rutgers University and is a member of the American Mensa Society. He has over 25 years of sales experience, including 17 years of online marketing experience, beginning in New York City, selling online advertising for internet giants such as AOL and Yahoo. Curtis has been in business since 2004 when he started Infinity Real Estate Solutions, which specialize in the purchase and sale of real estate investment properties, and is currently the owner of Cal Design, a website design company he started in 2007. Curtis is also the CIO of Modapara. It is Modapara, right?
It is.
Modapara Foundation, which is a nonprofit NGO that provides elite logistics and mobility solutions for search and rescue, disaster response, and humanitarian relief. In 2021, Modapara launched its COVID-19 testing and vaccine program, utilizing their new mobile high-complexity labs, which are the only mobile labs built to biosafety level 3 in the Western Hemisphere. Modapara provides COVID-19 testing at pre-game events, or it provided COVID-19 testing at pre-game events at this year's Super Bowl, and has recently been awarded its first multi-billion-dollar international contract. Curtis and his beautiful wife, Charlotte, are the founders of Reigning Sun Ministries, which focuses on helping others understand and pursue their God-given calling, and have proudly served at East Coast Christian Center for the past 5 years. Curtis's story is one of strength through adversity, from growing up in a very difficult environment to his battle with alcohol at a very young age to being diagnosed with major health issues in recent years. His goal remains to finish strong and share his testimony on the importance of trusting in the Lord and setting Jesus as the cornerstone of your life. Welcome, Curtis.
Great to be here. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Curtis, when we asked you to speak today, you were very intent on not only sharing your story, but sharing the message of trusting in God. So I just want to take us back to the beginning, shall we? Let's talk about young Curtis, the childhood of Curtis.
So we have to start there, huh?
We have to, just a little bit, the highs and the lows.
Well, I think if I had to sum up in a few words, it was pretty much trauma and drama. It was pretty intense. Both my parents were alcoholics when I was growing up. My dad was a functioning alcoholic. He was okay, like he would drink every day, but he was able to go to work. He always provided for the family. My mother, on the other hand, was a very severe chronic alcoholic, and she kind of set the tone for the house. And she was extremely angry and violent most of the time. And the issue was she was one of these people that could actually drink for like 3 straight days and not go to sleep. It was very, very intense. And there was times, my brother and I had this relationship where, we were almost like POWs in this house. And basically what had happened, she would just yell and scream all night long. And when she ran out of things to yell at us about, she would actually pick up the phone and start calling relatives to yell about it. It was really crazy. And so I actually think I invented the first pair of noise-canceling headphones. I used to take a pillow and I wrapped a belt around a pillow and actually went to sleep with it around my head. It was kind of intense, but I remember one time, just a few highlights. I locked her out of my bedroom, and she was so intent to get in, she actually took an axe and she axed down my door to get in my bedroom. It was that type of environment. And just a couple other things. I remember I was 6 years old, and it was Thanksgiving Day, and my dad had finally reached a tipping point, and he basically called a mental hospital to have her committed, and they basically dragged her out on Thanksgiving Day. And she was there for about 6 months, and I remember my next birthday, my 7th birthday, having to get her checked out of a mental institute, literally just to go eat. So it was pretty stressful. There was a lot of things going on. There was plenty of visits to the police station at night, DUIs and things like that, multiple suicide attempts. There was just a lot of things going on for a kid. And so, I found my own release in other things, And I started drinking when I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, I actually had 3 dresser drawers that were full of Schaefer beer. I used to steal beer all the time. And so my release was basically just to kind of do the same thing and do what I saw, do what I was trained to do. And so growing up, I was, had a little rough. The thing is that nobody really knew from the outside what was going on. I played sports. I did really well in sports. All the way up through high school, I played varsity, soccer, baseball. I also did really well in school. I wound up doing excellent. I was on the honor roll all through school. And so on the outside, the appearance was that everything was fine. But inside, I was just living this kind of crazy, war zone kind of life. So
at what point did you say, I can't live like this, or I'm living a dual life? Did that ever occur to you? It
took a while, because that lasted, through high school, through college, and even into my marriage. But basically, there were some situations that happened when I got married where I realized that I had to make a decision, and I had to basically, face the facts, because I was causing some major problems. And I think the main issue was I realized that I think I was going to be destroying my marriage, and I was going to wind up doing the same thing to my kids that my mother had done to us. Because the sad part about my mentality and kind of my disposition was that I was very much like my mother. Mm-hmm. I was very compulsive, and I had some of the same tendencies and kind of traits that she had. And I knew that if I didn't really get my act together, that it was going to be, it was going to be some turmoil. So,
wow,
that's kind of.
So, tell us about your salvation story.
The salvation story is kind of funny. My wife and I actually got saved at an Amway event. We actually got involved in Amway right before we got married. We got sponsored, and we actually got pretty active, and we got involved with our upline diamonds in the business, and they were super wealthy. They had a 20,000 square foot house, and they had an 80-foot yacht, and they had a fountain speed boat, and they had, their own jet. They had all these things, but the biggest thing was that they were intent on bringing people to the Lord. And so we went to a leadership conference up in Augusta, Maine, and while we were there, they always had these non-denominational services for people before they went home. And so there was a guy who actually spoke, and he asked a couple questions. And he was basically given this message, and at the end, he said, I want you to think about choosing Jesus, and just think about this. He said, think about if you choose Jesus, but what if you're wrong? What if the whole Bible was a lie? What's the big deal? What's the downside? And he says, you probably live a cleaner life. You probably sin less. You're probably healthier. You probably have, some better things that come out of it. So the fact was that there really wasn't any downside. But then he said, what if you choose not to choose Jesus and you're wrong there? And he said, basically, you're going to be, it's going to be eternity in hell for you, buddy. And so, me at the time, I was a gambling man, so I took the odds, and I kind of it was a rational decision at the time. It was kind of a head decision, but that's actually how we got saved. And it didn't all work originally. It was just kind of a head decision, and we kind of said the prayer, but that's kind of where it all happened. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny. So you can say what you want about Amway. I know everybody has an opinion sometimes about that, but the fact is that, I was this blue-collar guy who was really going nowhere with a bad past, and that's actually where I kind of found Jesus, and entrepreneurial speaking, I actually found my dream there.
So that's amazing. So you said It was a head choice. Does that mean like all your struggles didn't go away, or it wasn't in your heart? What did you mean by a head choice, a rational decision?
Well, I made the decision because I knew it was the right decision to make. So, based with that ultimatum, I said, hey, it makes sense to follow Jesus. It makes sense to say yes. And so the thing was, though, is that I didn't understand what it meant to follow Jesus, and just saying the prayer, I didn't understand about a relationship. And what happened was, it's really funny, was I used to think that it didn't stick. And so I would keep sinning or messing up or doing things wrong. And every time we would come back to one of these conferences or we'd go to church, there'd be an altar call. And so I didn't feel it really stuck. So I keep on going back to get resaved. And I actually got saved probably about 20 times. I kept going up and up and up over and over again. And so that went on for years. And finally, I was at this other event where I had it was actually a personal encounter with Jesus. and I understood the importance of actually to get to know him personally. And I had some moments where I really pressed into him, because I think that in order to get to that place, everybody has to have their own moment, that own personal experience that nobody else can steal. And that kind of happened a while back, But things didn't even then, things didn't always just get better. It took some time, and I still went through some struggles there. And some of those struggles, if I can just continue, was even though I had saved, and even though when we got to the point that I had stopped drinking, I understood the relationship of Jesus, I changed my ways, my habits got better, but I wound up into a totally different area where I wound up with a major bout of depression. And the reason I had the depression was because in my mind and in my past, everything I always did for fun involved alcohol. Like every time we went out, every time we did something, like in my family, every time they even just got, my mom went to her aunt's house to get her haircut, they had a case of beer. Everything had alcohol. And so all of a sudden, even though I was doing the right thing and I cut the alcohol out of my life, I was having a pity party because I couldn't have any fun anymore. And so it really put a strain on my marriage. It put a strain on my relationship with other people, because, I would go out and play golf, and then afterwards I'd see my buddies and they'd get a beer at the bar, and I'd be sitting there feeling sorry for myself, having a pity party because poor me, I can't have a beer, I can't have fun. And so even that, with going out to dinner with my wife, we'd sit at a restaurant and I'd watch a couple having a bottle of wine, and I'd be sitting here the whole time, pouting, feeling sorry for myself because I couldn't have any fun. And the problem was that I didn't talk to my wife about it. I didn't talk to anybody about that. And so I kept that all internalized, and I went through this bout for years. And, I know I could only imagine what my wife thought at times, because, we were out at dinner and trying to have a good time, and I'm sitting here thinking about this issue where she's probably thinking about, why isn't he talking to me? Why isn't he happy? And so it was a major battle. And I didn't get through that till I kind of had to come to Jesus meeting with myself and Jesus. And again, it was one of these things where I had to get on my knees literally and really have a moment where I would not let go. It was kind of one of those Jacob moments. Jacob in the Bible, he was the guy who wrestled with God. And I wound up in a place where I was asked to give a talk at an event. And in order to prepare for the event, I needed a scripture. And the scripture I got was 1 Peter 2:6 about, laying a stone in Zion and Jesus being the cornerstone. And I started preparing this talk, and everything was going to be great. I was going to prepare this talk. It was all about Jesus being the cornerstone, the first stone laid. It's going to set the position, the direction for everything afterwards. You need to set Jesus, as this stone, and it was going to be a great message for everybody else. And in the middle of this, it was really emotional, but I really broke down, and Jesus literally told me that he had something for me and gave me a vision of a picture, and he said, I have something just for you, and it's about the cornerstone. And the vision and the picture was not of this, foundational cornerstone, but it was about a ceremonial cornerstone. And the fact was that my dad had been a mason, and I used to work with him all the time. And he was the really good friend of the mayor in our town. And so he actually used to be the guy who was always asked to lay those ceremonial cornerstones when they broke ground, or when they just put up the new police station or courthouse or something like that in our town. And actually, it's funny, I have a picture. But this was when I was 5 years old, and God reminded me of this picture. But this is a picture when my dad was laying in 1969. I was 5 years old. I know you probably can't see it that well. But he reminded me that I had this picture and to go back to it. And what he said to me was that, it could be a foundation, but also it could be something to celebrate, because those cornerstones were there to kind of commemorate and dedicate a building and be something really proud of. And so he kind of put a stake in the ground right that day, and he kind of showed me that really giving up alcohol and doing the things I was doing for my family wasn't a burden, even though I was walking around with this feeling like I was making this major sacrifice. But in fact, I was actually kind of being commissioned to, bring the honor back to my family name, and that I needed to stand, proud of what I was doing, and basically, it was going to be kind of a badge of honor for what I was doing for my heritage and my legacy. So that was kind of a moment that I had where literally, I was crying for like an hour. It was this major, thing. And but it took a moment like that to kind of break through, the enemy break through the enemy's, lies, because, a lot of us are saved and yet we still battle all these things. And it's just a matter of, fighting for the truth. So
that's amazing. I'm trying to hold back the tears myself. So when you say we talk about, you wanted to talk about trusting God today.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a common phrase. I'm just trusting on the Lord, just waiting on the Lord. What do these phrases mean to you, and how do you walk them out practically in your life?
Well, I think at the beginning, I know a lot of Christians say I'm trusting in the Lord, and a lot of people know what to say. They know the right things to say. And I think there's still a lot of people that may battle with that. And the fact is that I said that too. I'd say, trusting in the Lord, just waiting on the Lord. But the fact was, that's just, those are just words. And I think that, we had been through some major, wilderness periods in our life, even after getting married and having businesses and things. Financially, we struggled on and off at times. There was a lot of things that we battled through. And I think I think that everybody has to go through their own trials. I think that, you only get tough, by basically getting sharpened and going through your own experiences. And so without really pressing in for maybe that one or two, those Jesus moments for yourself, those things may never come, and you may never get to the spiritual maturity that you need. Because I believe that if you read the Bible, you understand that God never promised a rose garden here, right? He said that there were going to be troubles, but in those troubles, we can still have peace. He's still going to be there for us. So to think that there's not going to be troubles is basically just being immature or being ignorant about what's really in store, even being a Christian. So I think it's really just a matter of being prepared. I think there's a lot of business owners here. There's a lot of people that are successful. And I think you would probably agree that if you did not plan for things to go wrong, if you just always thought everything was going to be perfect, and you were just totally rocked or surprised every time something small happened in your business, you would be on a roller coaster. And I think Christians can be the same way. And so what we did, and we just always pressed into God, and we did a lot of Bible studies on the wilderness, and we just kind of pressed in for the truth about, that is going to happen, and we need to expect it. But again, it's just a matter, I think, of spiritual and mental toughness. But you've got to exercise those muscles, to actually get there sometimes.
So what do you mean by just pressing into the Lord? Does that look like Bible study? Does that look like alone time with God? What does that mean to you?
With me, I think with everything, it may be different with everybody, but with me, I'm kind of stubborn, and I don't do it as often as I should. But the fact is, it's really just kind of getting down there and looking for an answer, or looking for a confirmation, or looking for a scripture, and not letting go until you get it. And my wife is notorious. She is the most incredible Bible student I know. And I'm not as good as her, but she is faithful, and she is steady, and she is she's on the mark every day. And I'm not as good as her, but she's taught me a lot. And one of the biggest things she taught me was journaling. And I think that is probably the biggest weapon that I have. And the reason is because when you journal something, it's basically you're memorializing something that you can always go back to. It can't be denied. It definitely did happen. God did give you a word. And, and I could think back, I brought this journal. I actually got this at a Wild at Heart conference in Colorado. But I know in this journal, I still have the diagram from when I came with the idea of having my web design business. It was September 18th, it was 2007. I was laying out in the mountains for 4 hours by myself at night, praying to God, crying because we just lost everything in the real estate market in Tampa. I didn't have a job. We didn't really have a business to go back to, and I needed a new direction. And I laid there literally. It was probably about 4 hours, and I did not go to sleep that night. And I stayed up in my bed drawing out this business plan that God had downloaded for me. And then if you look in this journal, and then you go on to it was September but then I went to December 19th, and on that day I know that all my friends around me were saying, "Hey, Curtis, you should probably quit that business and get a job because you're not making any money. You made $150 last month. You should probably get a job." But I was able to, but I pressed in again, and I told Charlotte to take the kids and leave the house, and I spent hours on the floor literally it was intense, but I documented what the Lord had given me that day and the scriptures and the confirmations, and they're in that book. And so, these are kind of like stones in the wall, you know what I mean? Because after you have this cornerstone and you set Jesus there, you got to man the wall and you got to build this wall, and that's just another stone in the wall along with your family and everything else. But I think that gives you a weapon. I think it gives you something where no man, the enemy, nobody can rob you. And if you know the enemy, when he comes to what? He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. They mentioned steal first. And so this is a way that it can't be stolen. And because if not, we forget. The enemy messes with your brain. The enemy makes you, manipulate your mind. And so I think that's the biggest weapon that we were always grounded and able to go back to. And I thank my wife for the wisdom, because it was her idea, but it's something that we try to teach everybody that we know.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. We'll be passing this journal around to is that okay? Everyone opens the journal up? No, I'm just kidding.
Just a few pages.
Maybe we can get a word in Curtis's journal. So you're talking to a group of business leaders. I just want to ask you one more final thing, and then we can open it up for a Q&A session. Sure. But what would you tell? Your background does not suggest that we should be talking right now, and you should have this kind of lifestyle. So I want you to speak a word or something to the group of leaders in front of you that maybe can encourage them, or like whatever it is that's on your heart to just share with this group about, you mentioned a few things like, don't think that everything is going to be peaches and roses, because God didn't say that in the Bible. He told us that there would be trials. So something that, just made you, I know you mentioned several things about turning the corner and the cornerstone and the journal. I think that's amazing. I just want maybe one final nugget or an overview of everything we just talked about. You pick.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that obviously we're all the same in our way. We all have different stories, and I'm sure we all have our own struggles. One thing is I talk to a lot of people, and people wouldn't necessarily guess what my past was. I talk to people in a lot of different places in life, and sometimes, people even say to me, but you wouldn't understand that, look at, whatever. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea. Right. And I kind of open up and I share a little bit, but, we all had these struggles in our own life. And, what I would say is, my biggest accomplishment through anything I've ever done really was just surrendering to God. I think one of the biggest accomplishments was basically tearing down, or barricading the enemy from my family, because what I did killed all these generational curses that were plaguing us for generations. And I think, slamming the door on the enemy and being able to kind of man the wall was the biggest thing, but that was not possible without surrendering to God. And my wife continues to work with me on that, because being a person with pride and an ego and being successful sometimes, that's the big struggle of laying it down. And so I would encourage everybody to find out if there's one thing that you're really supposed to do it. And I watched a video, it was a couple years ago, and it was basically about living like you're dying. It was about, what if you only had 6 months to live? And it was a tearjerker, man. It was really emotional. It was really tough, but it was really motivating. And what would you do if you only had 6 months? And, to be honest with you, I was, man, it was amazing. It was like, this is amazing. But, I thought about it for a day or maybe two. And then I was back on the hamster wheel, man. I was back killing it. I was trying to do whatever I could in my own strength to make things happen. And the fact is that there's some things that happen in my life personally where, I don't know what's in store for me. Only God knows what's in store, and it's the same thing for you in your life. But, in the past year and a half, I was diagnosed with MS about a year and a half ago, and I'm battling through some of that. And then on top of that, 6 months ago, I wound up going into the ER with something I thought was very minor, and a couple of days later, I was having a quadruple bypass. And so I wound up having open heart surgery. A couple of months after that, I wound up with COVID. And so the fact is that the recovery's been great, but the Lord is showing me some things like, life can be gone really fast. We do have promises from God, but ultimately He's the only one that knows the future. And so I would just say that, we're all busy with life and we're all busy with everything that we're doing. But I would just try to press in and latch into that one thing. What is that one thing? Because the fact is, I still have a lot of goals and we're still going to do a lot of things in life. But, if God never gave me another blessing or he never did another thing for me, the fact that I was able to maybe do that one thing and stop the generational curses and stand there and hold back the enemy so my kids never saw that environment and can grow up pure. I have this kind of vision sometimes, and it's me teleporting back to my childhood, but instead of me, it's my children's faces, Sorry.
You don't have to apologize. I'm doing it too.
But I see, and I picture what if it was my kids back in that house, when I was a kid, going through that war zone. And all I say is that God could do nothing ever again for me again, and I would be 100% satisfied because the one thing was the one thing. And I did the one thing. And so I would just press into you to get with God and really fight to find out what that one thing is, because we're all going to be busy with life. We're all busy with a lot of things, activities, fun, sports, business. But I would just say fight for the one thing you need to do. That's all.
Fight for it. And it goes back to what Pastor Brian was saying earlier, is like, be on guard, be on alert. That new thing, that one thing is on its way. Thank you so much, Curtis. That was an amazing conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Impact Brevard podcast. We meet the first Thursday of every month. Business owners and leaders from all walks of life in all industries are welcome and encouraged to attend. Please email impactbrevard@eccc.us with any questions you would like answered or topics covered in future meetings, and receive RSVPs to upcoming events. Together, we can make an impact in Brevard for Christ.